The story of the Good Samaritan must be read in context. Now, Jesus had sent 72 followers out on a missionary journey. They had come back with a good report, but Jesus noted that the scholars had rejected their message. Now we have the lawyer seeking to test Jesus by questioning him about what shall I do to inherit eternal life. Now, this lawyer is one that is an expert in Old Testament law. He's one of those scholars that Jesus had just been commenting about. The question was a hypothetical question. Lawyers still ask hypothetical questions, but he's not seeking to further understand the law. He's seeking to discredit Jesus. After all, what could this uneducated Galilean teach a scholar, he thought. Now let me pause here and say I've learned some of my best career and life lessons from those whose formal education was far below mine. But the question here then is, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? Now this is not Old Testament language. The Old Testament law would say, do this and live. The lawyer is using Jesus' terminology, in essence asking him, what is it that you are teaching? What's your philosophy? Jesus is aware of what he's attempting to do, but he doesn't relinquish his authority as the rabbi. And so this lawyer's question, which seeks to elicit Mosaic principles, how can I be saved? Jesus answers, you tell me according to the law. The lawyer's response is, one can be saved by perfectly and persistently obeying the whole law with their whole heart, with their soul, with their mind and strength, and to love their neighbor just as they love themselves. As the teacher, Jesus responded, you've answered correctly. He's using now Old Testament language. The lawyer is now on the spot because the system he is seeking to defend is a system that no one can be saved under, because no one can keep the law perfectly. In seeking to condemn Jesus, the lawyer had condemned himself and the entire system that he was supporting. Now, the lawyer at this point feels obligated to justify himself, justify his question, and so he attempts to do something else by asking Jesus a second question. Well, who is my neighbor? Now, the lawyer knew that perfect obedience was impossible, so he was really just trying to seek a justification for his lack of obedience, an excuse. Who is my neighbor? The traditional Jewish response would be, my neighbor is my fellow Israelite. Now, Jesus' response expands the established concept. He says, a certain man is going down to Jerusalem. Jesus makes it clear that the priest and the Levite are Jewish. The hero in this story is a Samaritan. We're not told the race of the victim because the race, the social status, even whether he's a sinner is irrelevant since the victim is a human being in need. Two Jewish travelers are coming down the road and they see the injured man. These two men, a priest and a Levite, belong to the elite of the Jewish society. Both of them were religious professionals. If anybody is expected to carry out the Old Testament law, it would be these men. But both of these men pass by the suffering traveler on the other side. The Samaritan came upon the same scene. Now, the Samaritan is considered a half-breed, half Jewish, half Gentile, and ought to be lesser by Jewish people. The Samaritans were the result of racial mixing after the Assyrians had invaded the northern part of Israel. The Samaritans and the Jews had political and social friction, and the Jews did not associate with them. Now, the difference between the Samaritan and the priest and the Levite is their compassion or lack thereof. The Samaritan used his wine, his oil, his clothing to bind the wounds. He placed the wounded man on his mount and brought him to an inn The Samaritan cared for the victim that night, and in the morning when he left, he made arrangements for him to be further cared for.
Stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true, I will rescue you.
At the conclusion of the story, Jesus asked the lawyer the final question: which of these three do you think was neighbor to the man who fell victim to the robbers? The lawyer probably choked on his words. He couldn't even find it in himself to pronounce the word Samaritan, so his answer was the one who showed mercy to him. Jesus had expanded the notion of neighbor to be beyond the people that we know, to include even strangers. The lawyer was like many scholars. They liked to study, but they didn't necessarily like to execute. Jesus again commands him to go and love your neighbor. And he commands us to love our neighbors without judgment, not trying to consider how they got in the condition. We are to love our neighbors unbiasedly. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week. Bye.